Mom, Dad, I humbly suggest you save some money and shop Amazon for back to school. It's for my growth, meaning my body's growing at an alarming rate. And clothes you buy me this year will be very small very soon. Plus, the clothes I love today will be out of style tomorrow. But at least your wallet doesn't have to be my fashion victim if you shop low prices for school at Amazon. Hopefully this is helpful. Amazon. Spend less, smile more.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to talk about a really common phenomenon where mothers and daughters and sons and fathers have more difficult relationships than those cross-gender relationships of mothers and sons and fathers and daughters. And it's interesting to explore in and of itself, but also this is a marital therapy issue that comes up is when a mom says that the dad is being too soft on the daughter, or the father thinks that the mother's being too hard on the daughter, or, whatever with the son, etc. Mother thinks the father's being too hard on the son is a big one. Point being that this needs to be explored in the rubric of the mother-child relationship or father-child relationship, but also how do the parents judge each other for what may be a somewhat normative phenomenon, and also why does this happen? And all that will be tackled after I tell you to subscribe. What was my most recent subscriber episode was the idea of a newborn adult. And if you do not know what that means, then it is a super interesting podcast episode. I use something that I saw online, and I talk about it in terms of adults, relationships, all sorts of things. Newborn parent doesn't mean the parent of a newborn child, but you'll have to listen to the episode to hear. I think it's a useful frame. Okay, so let's move on to the meat of the episode. So mothers and daughters have a famously contentious relationship, the same as fathers and sons. Whenever anybody's writing a memoir, they tend to have a more difficult relationship in retrospect with the same-sex parent. Why is this? It's because you identify more. You want to teach the child more. Whereas the mother-son relationship, that is totally different. There's all sorts of memes like, a mother is the son's first love and the son is the mother's last love, and things like that, and all the daddy's little girl stuff on the other end of fathers and daughters. You don't feel like you have to shape this person. You have to shape what they want to marry. You have to be kind to them. You're basically a template for who they're going to love, is how many people think about it. And that, to an extent, is true, you really cannot, you can obviously share with your child universal human experiences, but of course it's easier to identify and project with a person that's your same gender, that looks probably a lot like you, acts like you, and is going through some of the same stuff. So a mother tends to think of her daughter as somebody that she's trying to shape into an adult and kind of help her learn about herself, about the world, etc. And she has a lot of input into the daughter's choices and all of these things. Whereas the father, yes, he thinks like that somewhat, but also he feels that he is, being kind to her and protecting her and showing her what it means to be loved so that she, recognizes a loving relationship. A lot of fathers specifically say that, in fact, there was an interesting study, before I get to what they say, there was a study that showed that CEOs who have daughters versus CEOs that only have sons are considered nicer by their employees. And that's because fathers are usually very nice to the daughters. That's like a specific relationship where there's not really much animosity. You don't really get triggered. Mothers get triggered by daughters, though, specifically in the teenage years. And this is, in all over, media and everything, and TV and movies and books, is always this idea of like, is the mother too close? Is she too intrusive? Is she too critical? Is she letting the girl grow up? This, that, and the other. And the one with the father, girls tend to think that it's just more of a benevolent presence. And now on the other side with the sons and the mothers, I mean, there's so much all over, media, and again, the same sorts of media about women that just idealize their sons, and they're just basically think that they could do no wrong, and their job is just to be, to protect him and to be loving and to make him food and to wash his clothes and whatever. And it's not thought that he's going to model after her. There's not a lot of people who say, like, my son is learning from me how, to do X, Y, Z as a mother. Of course he is, like if you're successful, let's say at your job, then, he may want to go into your job, or if you have a strong work ethic, or if you're a loving person, all of these things. What's ironic is that, people tend to model on just whichever parent is just most temperamentally like them. And that's really anybody's guess. It could be the mother or the father. So, but also, there is this idea societally that the same gender person is your template, and that is important too. Sons do model after their fathers and daughters after their mothers to some degree more in their own mind. Irrespective of how they actually come out, they think to themselves more. Like many. In fact, I don't think I've had an adult male client who said to me something like, when I'm thinking about how to be a dad, I'm remembering stuff my mom did. Sometimes they say it if a dad was not around at all, not in those words, but they'll say, like, I learned to be a loving parent or something. But I hear so much about, my dad did X, so I don't want to do X, or my dad did X, so I do want to do X, and specifically for men, it's really very, very salient and very meaningful to have an involved father. And, a father that is on your side and that is not thought to be critical. And I have a whole podcast called When Your Father Out Alphas You. So when your father just cannot ever pass the torch, he always has to be the big man in the room, then that can be very destructive for boys. And I talked about on that episode, and y'all should always watch Succession. Logan Roy was the big magnate, and he's this super alpha dude who's self-made man. And his sons were they could never approximate him. And that was to their detriment over time, I mean, he was a dick too. And fathers that do have this alpha stance where they're always looking down on the son are usually dicks, but that doesn't help. I mean, they're always dicks if that's how they make the son feel, but that doesn't help the son knowing that, it's still always being the one who's looked down on by your father can be very, very toxic. And then on the other hand, we have all the things like Mommy Dearest, which was the memoir written by Joan Crawford's daughter. If a mother is very critical, intrusive, and does not seem to love or accept the daughter, then this also is super, super difficult. Because this is supposed to be your template. And women say all the time, I don't want to do this thing that my mom did, or I do want a mother just like my mom did. This is what I learned from my mother about parenting. Because women talk a lot more in session about parenting than men. I mean, I got some men, like, you barely know they have kids. I mean, they mention them, but, like, it's tangential, it's tangential to whatever we're working on, which is cool. That's fine. It's a different way to think about it. Men are better compartmentalizers in that way. And women, being a mother is usually the core identity, and everything comes out through that. I don't think I have many sessions where in a row where I do not mention, or the woman doesn't mention her children. Or that isn't some sort of a topic, And whereas with men, we can go months, I mean, if they're working on a relationship, we're working on the relationship. They're not talking about their kids. If they're depressed, if there's career issues, I mean, we're just not talking about it. And that's not the same as it is for women. So for women, where being a mother is the primary identity, irrespective of whether she's even a CEO or anything, women think all the time about the sort of role model that their mother was and whether they want to be that kind of role model or not. And if it's not, then they're reading a million parenting books to figure out how to be a mother in the absence of having an automatic default template from their mother. This is very, very difficult for a lot of women. And most men nowadays are trying to be a little bit different, at least from their own father, because men are more involved every passing hour, So certainly there's a huge generational shift. And so many guys are like, yeah, my dad never changed a diaper. And I loved him. He was a great dad. But I mean, imagine the other way, right? It's funny. My mother never changed a diaper and she was a great mom. Hell no. Whoa, what? Like, how would that even work? So unless I guess she was incredibly wealthy, but still, even if she was incredibly wealthy, we would look down upon the woman who did not change a diaper versus the man who did not change a diaper. And nowadays, both parents would be looked down upon. And it used to be the mother would be. So now, if you're a dad, you've changed a diaper. It doesn't matter if you have more money than God, you still change a diaper. And so many, many men, even if they love their father and they had a good father, they're still trying to do something very different, be it involved, hands-on, dad, often teleworking, have like 1 million more hours per week with their kid than their dad had. And that was a dad they even thought was a good dad. Never mind one who wasn't a good dad. So women, though, do not usually have such a disparity. Often their mothers were more involved and were more stay at home, and now they're trying to work and manage children. So they're, in fact, possibly seeing the children less than their mother did. Although, interestingly, studies show that stay at home moms in the 80s hung out with their kids less than working moms do now. I think it was the 80s. Maybe it was before that. But either way, the hands-on, intensive parenting climate has changed things a lot. But when women do not feel accepted by their mothers, then that is a core wound. If they don't feel accepted by their fathers, it's still not great, but there's so many people that say that their same gender parent was a buffer against the meanness of the cross-gender parent. The same-sex parent is just really very important. And so it's a very fraught relationship because it's so important. And this is obviously not to say that a mother's not important to her son or a father's not important to the daughter. Of course, they're key, but it's different. It's just different. And it's not the person that you're expected to turn into if you're not careful in the case of like a bad fit, or a bad interaction or relationship. So if somebody has an alcoholic father, then they say, the guy says, I don't want to be like my dad, so I don't drink, a lot more than the guy would say that about their mom. And that just is what it is. That's just stuff that I've seen over the past 15 years in practice. And again, this is ironic because you could turn into either of your parents. It's like totally random. It's based on who you are, who they are. So then what happens in couples counseling when the woman says to the guy, oh, you just let her do everything and you make me into the bad guy all the time and you should be like me? Well, then, or the guy says to the wife, you baby our son so much, he's never going to turn into a man if you keep him like, under your apron strings, et cetera, And this has to be situated within the context of it is completely normal to be softer on the cross-gender relationship, and it is totally normal to be harder and have more stringent standards for the child that is your same gender, that you feel a personal imperative to help shape. And this can just be, I have a podcast called Your Son Doesn't Have to Treat the Kids the Same as You Do. And your wife doesn't have to treat the kids the same as you do. They're in a respectful, loving marriage. We can look at kind of a whole range of behaviors as potentially useful and helpful as long as the parents don't cut each other down. So in a healthy, functioning family, the guy could have stronger standards for his son, let's say his athletic performance than the mother does, and nobody dies, and it's not bad, and the child doesn't end up traumatized. And the father doesn't have to look down at the mother and say she babies him, and she doesn't have to look up at him and say that he's too harsh. Same with the daughter. So there's a lot of women who are like, why don't you ever tell her that she's being disrespectful? And the guy's like, because she's not being disrespectful. Maybe you're just a bitch, and she can't deal with you like how I can't deal with you, etc. You hear these sorts of things in couples counseling. And the healthy version of that would be the mother owning that she has more skin in the game and is more personally triggered by the daughter, working on that, the part that's healthy is good. The part where she's overly triggered is not. And the father saying, and both of them saying, yeah, he's going to be kind of a safe place for her. I don't have to get him to give her more discipline. That's his relationship with her. If he's the one who loves his little girl unconditionally, good. Maybe that's who she'll end up with, is a man who loves her unconditionally. And the son who's supposedly babied by the mother, maybe he'll be with a woman who adores him, because that's what will make sense to him, given that his mother loved him so much. And you know what? That's a good outcome. So there's space for both types of parenting. Now, when does this cross over? Well, I just said the triggering thing. When it gets into the unhealthy is when the parent is basically projecting that the child is their own parent. The child reminds them of the bad relationship with their own parent. So a mother that can't deal with her daughter, feels that her daughter is very disrespectful because her own mother. And she always says, oh, she acts like my mother. She acts like my mother. People come out and say this directly, you know. She acts like my mother. And they don't realize they're also saying I am projecting that she is like my mother because I have unresolved issues with my mother that I should be exploring in therapy. Yeah, maybe there's a genetic link in personality too, but mostly this is my shit and I'm being activated and triggered. So if you're screaming at your kid a lot, if you're name calling, if you think that they are just bad, just a bad seed, a bad person, or this is something your partner is saying, then that person needs to get help and needs to be in therapy because they are, and I have a podcast coming up actually on situations that trigger you and why you get triggered. And it's always your own shit. I mean, spoiler, I guess you can skip the next one. And it's always your own background. It's always your own background. So if you're thinking, yeah, my daughter's such a bitch because she's like my mother, guess what? You have exactly what you're going to talk about in therapy for the next 6 months is I still have not resolved my issues with my mother. And I probably will not in this lifetime with my mother, but I can certainly resolve them within myself and come to peace with them so that they do not manifest like whack-a-mole. I push them down because I don't want to think about them, and then they come out in my relationship with my daughter. And the exact same things for men that have unresolved issues with their fathers. And of course, sometimes the mother is triggered by the son and the father's triggered by the daughter, and this is the exact same thing. It's likely it reminds you of your own parent or one of your own parents or possibly a sibling. And you need to work on that stuff yourself. So the time to intervene is not if your husband says, no, I think he could run 3 miles with me right now. Come on, get up. Let's run 3 miles. And the woman is saying, oh, but it's hot. You know, it's hot out. Let's not make him run. It's hot, right? That would be a situation in which she should say, tell him to run 3 miles. That's fine. He has higher standards for his son than I do. You know, they're both athletic. Fine, great. Versus if he says, get the fuck up, you're so lazy. Oh my God, this is like my brother, always on the couch. Man, you even got to get onto a team? You're such a pussy, right? Of course, I'm making this very, very dramatic. But in that situation, the woman should say, we need to go to couples counseling because he's going to reject your telling him to go to individual. So, of course, I tell you all the time, this is the back door to individual. You say, we got to get into couples counseling because we're having massive conflict on how to treat our son, and I'm unhappy in this marriage as a result. Because obviously castigating somebody, name calling is your own shit. It has nothing, there's no positive of that. But the high standards of let's get up and run 3 miles, that's positive. Well, a woman saying to her daughter, oh, why don't you wear this outfit? No, I don't know about that one for picture day. What about this one for picture day? And getting more involved than the man thinks makes sense. Leave that alone. That's just their stuff. They're just figuring that out together. The woman is more involved. She identifies more with how the senior picture is going to turn out. She gives a shit. This is, sure, she cares about 10,000 times more than you do. Let that alone. Don't invade that situation and be like, the hell do you care what she wears? My little girl's going to wear whatever she wants. Obviously, that would be toxic. But if she says, oh my God, you're so ugly in that picture, we got to change, we got to get you all new clothes, look at your body, look at your face, that's exactly when you intervene and you say, we got to go to couples counseling, this isn't working. And that woman is probably her own mother talked to her exactly the same way. And now she's replicating it subconsciously. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It's an interesting topic. I hope you found it interesting too. And please do subscribe for all the extra episodes, over 165 extras. And I'll talk to y'all soon. Have a great day, guys.